Good morning, Year 7s, and welcome to the summer term book talks. I'm of course broadcasting from home, but I've got a little visitor today because I have actually really missed seeing your friendly faces around school and in our LRC lessons. So I thought I would introduce you guys to one of the friendly faces I have living at home. This is Dash, my Border Terrier, who is actually very grumpy and very exhausted at the moment because she has been on 4 or 5 walks a day because everyone has been taking her out for their daily exercise. So without further ado, I'm going to put her down for a little sleep, and she'll be joining us later in the broadcast. So it is a very strange circumstance we find ourselves in. I know a lot of you are quizzing and a lot of you are reading, which is absolutely fabulous. But I know that access to books can be a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to be talking about today are books that are all on our ebook platform. Now, before we went into lockdown, your parents were all sent an email which explains exactly how you get the ebook app. What I will do now is just show you the front page of the ebook platform to give you an idea what it looks like for those of you who haven't actually been on it already. And there we go. It looks just like that. You can download it on your tablets, on your phones, on your iPads. If you have a problem getting it or downloading or don't have the instructions, look at the Weydon VLE and you can actually download the app from there. So it's actually really very, very straightforward. If you have any problems, do let me know. But as I said, your parents were all sent an email, I think it was on the 23rd of March, and it has step-by-step instructions on how to download it. So when you get to the home page, you can see that there are recommended reads for Key Stage 3. Now, I've updated these on a regular basis, so there'll be new books going up probably every couple of weeks. There's also Key Stage 4 books and some topic-related books you might be interested in. Another one here, which is great, is audiobooks. So absolutely you can listen to an audiobook, and of course you can quiz on them also. There are some fabulous choices there, so please do go and have a look. And this bit at the bottom here is where the new editions go on. So all the new releases go on here, and that's happening pretty much on a weekly basis. It's a whole school platform, which means it runs from year R all the way up to year 11. So before any of you have any great ideas, no, you may not quiz on any Key Stage 1 or a Key Stage 2 book. There's a lot of choice on the platform. There are some fabulous books on there, so you do have a lot of choice. As I said, any problems, please just let me know and I'll help you out as best as I can. So, all the books I'm talking about today are on the ebook platform. They are all quizable, which is fabulous. Actually, having said that, I think there's 1 or 2 that are brand new that I'm going to talk about that don't have a quiz yet. But there are lots that have quizzes on there, and I will be telling you the levels of all the books I'm talking about. And so there's a lot of choice, guys. So without further ado, let's get on to the book talks. So the first genre we're going to be looking at today is a thriller. And I know that the majority of you, as do I, love a good murder mystery. So I'm going to start off with an author that you probably all know, you're all very familiar with, and that is Fleur Hitchcock. You might have read her Murder at Twilight. Her first book was Murder in Midwinter, and the one I'm going to be talking about today is her latest one, which is The Boy Who Flew. All of her books are on the ebook platform, which is fantastic news. And apart from Murder at Twilight, they are all quizable, which is actually fantastic. I'm actually going to show you her page so you can see from here that, wow, great selection for you to have a look at. So if you like a good murder mystery, I really, really, really would advise have a look at Fleur Hitchcock. She is a fabulous author. I'm going to be talking today about The Boy Who Flew, which is an orange level book, and it's set in Victorian London. And just to give you a sense of what it's about, I'm going to read you the prologue. This could have happened, or it could be happening, now, somewhere, in a parallel universe. Imagine yourself standing over a city, a new, golden, sharp-cut city rising boldly towards the sky from its grubby roots. It teems with people and lights and rats and life and death. It swarms, it breathes, it grows and shrinks. But not all of the city's new. To one side, an older, shabbier cluster of houses teeters on the edge of the excitement. Focus on one slender house. A jade dragon coils around the candlestick. A red shaded lamp glows in the drawing room, but a bright light shines in the cellar. Look again. Swing round until you're over the yard and you can see inside. It's not all dark. There are lanterns inside the kitchen. Train your spyglass in through the tiny window panes, and there you'll find me. So the story follows a young lad called Ethan Wilde, and he basically wakes up one morning to find his best friend, Mr. Chen, murdered. Basically, they have been inventing a flying machine. So what Ethan has to do now is he has to try and, first of all, find out who murdered Mr. Chen. Secondly, he has to find out, who is trying to get hold of the flying machine. Obviously, it's before people were flying. We weren't getting in planes flying around the world. This is Victorian London. So obviously, if someone can come up with a way of transporting people around, making people fly, they can earn a lot of money. So Ethan also has to find out who wants to get their hands on the flying machine. It's a really fast-paced thriller and it's tremendous fun. So if you like Fleur Hitchcock, if you haven't tried it yet, give it a go. It's a great book. And again, orange level, quizzable, fabulous. The next one I'm going to talk about is another author, and that author's name is Christopher Edge. Again, he is a really great author. I'm going to actually look at him on the ebook platform because he has a lot of books, and I think you've probably seen most of them before. You'll probably come across a lot of them. We do have some of them in the LRC. I'm going to be talking about his most recent one today, and that's The Longest Night of Charlie Noon. But as you can see, that's the first page of his books on the ebook platform. If you want a challenging read, I really would recommend the 12 Minutes to Midnight series. It's a trilogy, and all these books are aqua, which is really unusual. The first book in the series is out of the LRC, so I suspect somebody is reading it, but this is the second one, The Black Crow Conspiracy. Again, it's a really fast-paced thriller. There are 3 books in the series. They are all on the ebook platform. And for those of you who want a bit of a challenging read, the aquas, we don't have many aquas, so fabulous, give it a go. Aqua sits just above above white, for those of you who don't know. So going back to the book I want to talk about today, it's called The Longest Night of Charlie Noon. And this book is a really strange book. I picked it up. It's a great book. It's a quick read. It's a black, and it's the only one of Christopher Edge's books that's a black. The rest of them on the ebook platform are all white, apart from the Black Crow Conspiracy trilogy, because they are all aqua, as I already said. But it's a real spooky read that really keeps you guessing because you're not really quite sure what's happening in the story. So it's definitely a thriller, and obviously a little bit of a mystery as well, but I did put it in the thriller section because I thought the way the story roams, I think it's a bit more of a fast-paced thriller that might get you thinking what's going to happen next. So I decided it belongs in the thriller section. Again, I'm going to read you the prologue, actually. The introduction goes a little bit like this. Once upon a time, 3 kids got lost in the woods. Sounds like a fairy story, doesn't it? But what exactly is time? Is it a second, a minute, an hour, or a day? Or are we talking about a week, a month, a year, maybe even a lifetime? A blink of an eye lasts for 1/10 of a second, while scientists reckon that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. Tick, tick, tick. Can I tell you a secret? Once upon a time doesn't exist. This story starts once upon a now. So to give you a clue, a lot of it is about time. They say it's a timeless novel. So there's a lot of play on words here, but it is a really, really good book. It's a quick read, so you can get through it really quite fast. I think in the book in total there are about, how many pages? 177 pages. So it's not a long story, but once you start reading it, you really get caught up in the story, and it really keeps you thinking. Time is a really strange thing. Time is something we have a lot of at the moment, and how to fill your time also is, what better way than to read a really good book? So what I thought I would also do, having talked about thrillers, I wanted to obviously talk about horror stories. Not one of my favourite genres, but I know a lot of you love a really good horror. So Darren Shan is on the ebook platform. All of his books are on there. I know some of you started reading him. He really is the master of horror for teenagers. He writes a real scary story, so if you like him, have a look at Darren Shan on the eBook platform. Lockwood & Co. We talked about these guys last time, the vampire hunters, the vampire killers, ghost hunters, ghostbusters, call them what you will, really, really spooky stories. The first book is definitely on the eBook platform, so you want to have a taste of what the series is like. We have all the books in the LRC when we return to school. The first book is on the eBook platform. The tagline is "Hauntings are our business," and this book really scared the living daylights out of me. It's a really scary title, but it is brilliantly written. Jonathan Stroud is an absolute master of suspense and horror. You could also look at a book called 13 Chairs. Again, really freaky, real horror story. And of course the Spooks Apprentice series. If you like a bit of a ghost story, that's on there also. So have a look through and see what takes your fancy. But there, as I said, plenty for everybody. If you want to look at Lockwood, that's a black. So again, well within everyone's levels. A lot of Darren Shan books, start with oranges, blacks and whites. So they're all within your levels, guys. So give them a go. The next genre we're going to be looking at today is science fiction. Last time, remember, we talked about Philip Reeve and his Railhead series, which is brilliant. I know a lot of you actually read it. Sadly, it's not on the eBook platform yet. But Philip Reeve's Mothstorm series is on the eBook platform. Blacks and Whites, a great series, so do give it a go if you like a bit of sci-fi. The series I'm going to talk about today is by a guy called Jeremy Kratz, and it is the Space Runners series. I have just finished this book and it is truly brilliant. Real page turner. I just couldn't put it down. I have to admit to being a bit of a Trekkie. I do like Star Wars, so the idea of going up into space was just too irresistible to me, so I actually read it pretty much in a day. I'll read a bit of the blurb just to get you into it so you can have a feel of what it's all about. So if you can imagine, it's planet Earth in the year 2085. It's about a guy called Benny who survives on what he can scavenge. But his life changes when he's selected as one of an elite group of kids chosen to train on the moon. He can't wait to fly a space runner, fight holographic monsters, and experience zero gravity. Benny and his crew are having the time of their lives until they discover that the moon is hiding a dangerous secret. Soon there might not even be an Earth to go home to unless they can defeat the oncoming alien invasion. As I said, fantastic page turner. Brilliant, and also really good characters. Benny meets up with a group of those two guys and two girls, and they are a really great team. They meet a lot of really good characters actually in the book, and it's just absolutely amazing. There is a second book, and the second book is also on the eBook platform. The second book is called Dark Side of the Moon, and it really does pick up where book one finishes. They are both black, so a great choice for a bit of science fiction. Now for the next genre, I'm going to talk about adventure and mystery. I put them together because often when we talk about adventure stories and mystery stories, they do have quite a bit of crossover. So I thought, let's put them all together and see what we come up with. So you remember that we have talked about the Nowhere Emporium on our book talks. That was way back in the autumn term. Now the sequel to that, the Elsewhere Emporium, is on the book platform along with the Nowhere Emporium. They are both black, so both quizzable, and you can read them both on the platform. We then talked about Shadowsmith. Now this one we did mention it in our recent book focus. And remember the one, it's all about the fabulous spiders that come into it that a lot of us weren't very happy with. But it's a brilliant book. Again, also that is on the eBook platform. And again, it's an orange, so absolutely fabulous. He's a great author, Ross Mackenzie, and his new book has just come out, not on the eBook platform yet, but look out for it. It's called Evernight in the LRC to borrow when we come back to school. But it's, again, a very good read. I just finished it last week. He really is a truly fantastic author, and he does manage to get a real combination of mystery and adventure when he's writing his books that really keep you wanting to read the story and find out what happens. We also talked about the Extinction Trials last time we had our book talks. Now, some of you I know have read them and really enjoyed the series, but the good news is they are all on the eBook platform. So all three of them are on the eBook platform. So I really would recommend these very, very highly. And the first two are orange. and the last one in the series is a black. So again, very accessible to all of you. And I always describe them as a mixture of the Hunger Games meets Jurassic Park. You know, if you can imagine the Hunger Games with dinosaurs, you've really got your perfect extinction trials. So do give them a go because they are absolutely great reads. Another author I kind of want to highlight today, and I say probably this falls more into a mystery, it's a mystery adventure, is Catherine Fisher. Now I know a lot of you have read this book already, The Clockwork Crow. I have only just read it. Again, it's a great read. It's quick, easy to read. It's an orange, quizable, fabulous. And her series is on the ebook platform. So you've got the second in the series, The Velvet Fox, also on the ebook platform. Not yet quizable, but I'm sure it will be shortly. But it is a very good series. I think, again, as we've spoken about before, she writes her characters really well. So you do identify with them. And there's something in them for everybody, I think. Even though the main character in this is a young girl called Seren, she actually, it's her mission to find what has happened to the young lad that's living in this house that she goes to stay in because he's mysteriously disappeared. What I'm going to do for you in this one, I'm actually going to read the first chapter because it is a really good scene setter and gives you a really good feel as to what the story is all about. So this is chapter 1 of The Clockwork Crow. Again, it's when you get into year 8, you'll be looking at some Gothic fiction. This is really has a real Gothic feel to it, and it's actually gone onto the Gothic fiction book list. So if you've already read it, you'll have a real sense of what it means to read a Gothic fiction and to write a Gothic fiction novel. So here we go, chapter 1 of The Clockwork Crow. Seren Reese is freezing. The clock ticks, frost is white, stars travel through the night. The railway station was deserted. The only thing that moved in its silent shadows was the big hand on the clock as it crept towards the hour of 8. Seren stared up at it, hypnotised and weary. How could it go so slowly? Had she really only been waiting half an hour? It seemed like forever. She was muffled in a heavy coat, a woolen hat, scarves and a shawl, but she'd never been colder in all her life. Even with the thick gloves thrust deep into her pockets, she couldn't feel her fingers. Her toes were numb. In fact, if she didn't move right now, she would probably freeze to the spot. So she jumped to her feet and began to stamp up and down the bare platform, the thump of her clumsy boots ringing in the bitter night. She stamped 14 steps to the wall, 14 steps back, to the wall, and back. Over everything, the benches and the roof and the railway posters, a thin layer of frost shimmered like crushed diamonds in the light from the lamp. The night was so silent it scared her. She breathed out a cloud and then turned quickly as the station master's door opened. A big man in uniform came out and stared at her. "You on your own, miss?" It was a stupid question and it annoyed her. There were a lot of cross answers she could have snapped out, but she swallowed them and just said, "Yes." "Waiting for the 8:40, are you?" "Is there any other?" "Well, no, not this time of night." He was a red-faced man. He wore a peaked cap that looked as if he'd been sat on more than once. He stared down at her as if she puzzled him. Finally he said, "It's a rare cold night. You could go into the waiting room, but it's first class." "Are you first class?" She knew she wasn't. No one ever spent that sort of money on her, but she pulled out her ticket and looked at it. "Third," it said in large letters. She put it back in her pocket before he could see it, drew herself up and said, "Yes, that's right. First class. Show me the waiting room, please." For a moment she thought he didn't believe her. Maybe he didn't, but he smiled and picked up her suitcase and set off along the platform. The case looked tiny in his hand, even though she'd found it so heavy. She hurried after him to a door with first-class waiting room written on the frosted glass. He opened it and said, "Here we go. This'll be a bit cozier. You'll be like toast in here till the train comes." She pushed past him into the warmth that was so wonderful she wanted to shout with sheer relief. The room was small. There was a bench against each wall, a big lamp, a big table with an oil lamp on it, and best of all, a fire in the grate, a pile of coals glowing scarlet under a coat of ashes. She went straight across and huddled over it. "Hey, you're fair frozen." The station master stepped back and looked at her curiously. "I've not seen you round here before. Travelled a long way, have you?" I used to live in India. Blimey, I bet it was a lot hotter there. Despite herself, she allowed a tiny smile. A bit. Couldn't stand that myself. All them flies and mosquitoes and tigers. Now you sit down and make yourself comfortable. No one to disturb you. You'll hear the train easy enough. He went out, letting in a shiver of icy air. Seren pulled off her gloves and found her fingers were blue and numb. She dragged the heavy bench closer to the coals and sat on it, tucking her feet up and pulling her coat and shawl tighter around her. That was so much better. Warmth began to thaw her nose and ears and fingers out. It was painful, but it was worth it. She yawned, wishing she could go to sleep, but she had to be so careful not to miss the train. The fire crackled and she watched it. Of course, what she told him about India was true. She'd lived there once, but only as a tiny baby. She couldn't remember anything about it at all, really, except a sort of vagueness of peace in the fierce blue glare of the sky, and someone leaning over her. She shrugged it away. Her parents had both died out there, and she'd been brought home in the ship and lived for 12 years at the orphanage of St. Mary's. Even now, she couldn't believe she was out of that place. Great Aunt Grace had found her and taken her away, but only for 6 months, because now Great Aunt Grace was dead too. The old woman had been bedridden, living in lonely splendour at the top of a dull old house near London, and Seren had hardly ever seen her. She stayed in the kitchen mostly, with Martha the maid and the white cat Samuel. She was already missing them. Maybe there would be a cat at Placifran. In her pocket, the letter crackled. She took it out and moved near the lamp to begin to read it again. Dear Seren, here's your railway ticket. As I told you at your aunt's funeral, your father's oldest friend, Captain Arthur Jones, has offered to take you in. Captain Jones is your godfather. It seems strange you've never met him. He has a wife, Lady Mare, and one son called Thomas, and his house is in Wales. It's a grand old place called Placifran. The train will take you to Treffield, the nearest station, where I'm sure someone will come to meet you. I do hope you'll be happy living there. Yours, most sincerely, G.R. Freeman, Solicitor at Law, Staple Inn, London. Seren crumpled it up thoughtfully. A grand house. It seemed so good to be true. She yawned again. The fire crackled, so quiet and warm that she closed her eyes, and for a moment everything was peaceful. But then somebody coughed. It was a small sound, the very smallest of sounds, but it made her eyes snap open in alarm. She stared across the table and sat bolt upright in shock. There was a man in the room. He was leaning back in the shadowy corner of the bench opposite, right back in the dark, so she could barely see him. A very thin, tall man with clothes as black as midnight. He wore a hat that hid his eyes, though she knew he was looking at her. And on his lap was a large parcel wrapped in newspaper and tied with string. He held it tight with both hands. His fingers were long and spindly, and on one was a ring, its stone a green glimmer of emerald. Seren sat frozen in complete shock. Where on earth did he come from? He couldn't have been here all the time. The room had been empty. The door had never opened, and even if she had fallen asleep, it could only have been for a second. Hello? The man said quietly. Hello? She said to be polite. She looked down and saw her fingers were twisted together. She uncurled her legs and sat up straight. What was there to be scared of? It was a waiting room. Anyone could come in and wait. But still, she didn't like it. A coal slid in the fire. The man's voice was not much more than a whisper. Are you waiting for a train? Yes. He sat upright. He seemed very restless. So am I, but maybe it's the same one. But it's late. I'm sure it's late. After all, he wasn't very frightening. She'd never seen anyone so thin or so anxious. It's not due yet, he said. He glanced over quickly at the door, and she saw his eyes, dark and wary, lit by a slant of lamplight from outside. Did you hear that? She stared at him. Hear what? That! Listen! She listened. She heard the wind, the tick of the clock, and maybe a distant drift of sound like a far-off cry. The effect of the man was astonishing. He jumped up in panic. It's them! I'm sure it's them! Do you think we can lock the door? He hurried over to it, but there was no key, so he opened it a slit and peered out. I can't see anything. It's so dark out there. He came back. Too agitated to sit, he paced up and down, such a tall man. Seren watched him fascinated. His hands clutching the parcel were long and fine, like the hands of a prince in one of her books. Whatever he had in his parcel must be precious. He held it so tight against himself the newspaper crackled. No one came in. Only the wind whispered up the door. Then quite clearly she heard it again, nearer now, a strange cry, cold and sharp and angry, as if some Arctic bird circled high in the frosty night. The stranger gave a murmur of terror and stood still. He put his face right up against the window and looked out, but there was only blackness. Seren could see the reflection of his face, white and weary looking under the tilted hat. Then he pulled down the blind and turned so fast it made her jump. "You heard that?" She said, "Yes. Is it a gull?" His laugh was hollow. "No, it's not a gull. I wish it was. Look." He glanced down at the parcel and said to her sharply, "I have to go out there. I have to see if it's then. Can I trust you?" She shrugged. "Well, yes, but I don't... Are you an honest girl? You look as if you are." Then with a sudden decisive movement, he held the parcel out. "I need you to look after this just for one moment." "But my train..." "I won't be long, don't you understand? I daren't take it out there in case they see it. A few moments, that's all, please." Reluctantly, she took it. He seemed hugely relieved. "Don't move. I'll be straight back." Astonished, she nodded. And then he was gone. And that is how the mystery of the Clockwork Crow begins. That is it time to finish now. So the next genre we're going to be looking at is comedy. I know that this is a great favourite. There are lots of really great funny books in the LRC, and there are also some really, really good ones on the ebook platform. The author I'm going to concentrate on today is a guy called David Solomons. Now, you might remember him from last time when we talked about My Brother is a Superhero. The good news is all of his books are on the ebook platform. So if you didn't have a chance to read him last time, do give him a go. The books are absolutely hilarious, and I know some of you have read them and really enjoyed them. As you can see, the first book we talked about is on there, and also the other books in the series. There are 5 in total at the moment. They are all black, which is great, which means quizable really for all of you guys, and also there's something on there for you all to enjoy. So if you like a really silly, really funny, hilarious read, these books really are for you. I think David Solomons does it really, really well. You might remember how it started when we talked about how Luke's brother Zach got the superpowers that Luke had always really wanted. Unfortunately for Luke, he happened to need to go to the toilet at just the wrong time. And so the superpowers went to Zach and he became Starlad. All the books in the series have talked about his adventures. So we meet him now in his final book, in book 5, which is called My Cousin is a Time Traveller. And as you can just imagine, it is just as crazy, just as madcap as all of the other books in the series. So just to remind us on what this is all about, and because I particularly love these books, I'm actually going to read chapter 1 from My Cousin is a Time Traveller. Chapter 1. That's the way the Wookiee crumbles. I leaned on my bedroom windowsill and gazed out at the searchlight's vivid beam reaching up from the roof of the Civic Centre, illuminating the underside of the clouds with the letters S.L. They stood for Starlad. To the wider world, he was a superhero, but I knew him as Zach Parker, my big brother. So far, during his short career, he'd saved Earth from, in order, a giant asteroid and a comic book owning supervillain, alien invaders disguised as my gym teacher, a world-eating top trump card, my evil twin, and a particularly annoying brain in the jar, and her sister. Those were his big end-of-the-world missions. But in his role as Earth's saviour, he also carried out a host of lesser duties in between. He was out there now, no doubt rescuing some small child from a rampaging robot, or catching a falling plane, or rounding up some criminal kingpin and his henchmen. There was a distant rumble, and the horizon burst into light, the explosion sending bright orange flames into the sky to silhouette the rooftops of our hometown of Bromley. It had to be Zack. I might learn the details of tonight's adventure when he returned later, but in all likelihood, the only thing I'd get from him would be a grunt as he pushed past me to the fridge for a snack. He was always hungry after a mission. That was his style, peckish after and reluctant before. He never wanted the responsibility of being a superhero, not from that first moment when a purple-caped, egg-headed alien called Zorban the Decider had chosen him to save the world. Zack couldn't see the point of having powers, and it was never far from his thoughts. Early that evening he brought it up for the gazillionth time. "And another thing," he said as we washed up the dinner dishes together. "Superheroes are expensive." "But you don't get paid," I reminded him. "You're a free service, like that antivirus software Dad has." "Yes, but there are costs associated with my exploits. Have you read the Council's latest annual report?" "Is this a trick question?" He scrubbed vigorously at the bottom of a pot. "It's all in there, itemised. The clean-up bill from just one interdimensional monster attack means they've had to find savings elsewhere in the budget. Did you know we're down to a fortnightly bin collection?" I did not, and I didn't care. "That's not all." He was getting into his stride now. "I'm just one hero, which means I can only deal with one incident at a time." "But you're not alone, are you? You've got Dark Flutter." That was the superhero identity of our neighbour, Lara Lee. She'd too been turned into a superhero by Zorban, but her powers were rather more limited than Zack's. Essentially, she could only talk to fluffy animals. "Fine, so there were two of us. Great," he shrugged. "So let's take firefighting just as an example. Think of how many fires 20 new firemen could deal with compared to just 2 superheroes. See, we're expensive and inefficient." Studying the blaze on the horizon, I caught a whiff of burning in the night air, and I thought about what Zack had said. Were superheroes a waste of money? But without Starlad, Earth would have been flattened by a giant asteroid, invaded by aliens, swallowed whole or ripped apart by quantum forces. That stuff was more important than a weekly bin collection, and anyway, I liked living in a world with superheroes. I yawned. My best friend Serge said I sound like an exhausted Wookiee when I yawn. It had been a long day. I'd expended a great deal of effort in avoiding a significant amount of maths and English homework. Before I went to bed, I made sure to leave the window wide open for Zack to fly through when he did eventually come home. In that regard, he was a bit like Peter Pan, but without the green tights and the curious attachment to fairies. Like the rest of the world, I felt safe with him out there. But unlike them, I realised as I rested my head on my Spider-Man pillow, I felt safe with him here too. And as I drifted off into a superhero dream filled with sleep, it struck me, not for the first time, that I liked living in a world with Zack. Not that I'd ever admit it to his face. And that's where the story starts. So, does Zack still want to be a superhero? After being given these amazing superpowers, is he going to carry on being a superhero? You have to read it to find out. Again, as I said before, it's a black and a really, really good read. In the book talks to some of you, I mentioned How to Tame a Human Tornado by Paul Tobin. This is on the ebook platform. Yay, if some of you really wanted to finish reading it. It is just brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. Couldn't put it down. But sadly, it's not quizable at the moment. But as I said before, it's all about, reading for pleasure. So if you did enjoy it to begin with, please give it a try. It's a great book, and enjoy it. So as we're into the summer term, and we are heading towards year 8, it'll be here before we knew it, guys, I wanted to give you a couple of year 7, 8 transitions to try. So I thought what I would give you is a book by an author called Susan Nielsen. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have actually read any Susan Nielsen titles before. We do have them in the LRC. They are really good reads. And pretty much, I think most of her books tend to be orange. I think there's one that's black, but I think most of them tend to be orange. So they're really, really accessible to all of you. I'm just going to pop in her name and show you her titles. I think when you actually see them, you'll actually recognise some of them. So you've got, there we go. You might actually recognise some of those titles. Very, very good. They are all basically what I call contemporary fictions. They're basically set in this time and age. They're all about children, basically your age, students really from year 8, 9, 7, 8 and 9. And they are really, really good books. The one that I actually want to talk to you about today is called No Fixed Address. And as the title suggests, it addresses the problem of homelessness, and it discusses about what it means to be homeless. I'll give you a bit of the blurb just so you have an idea of what it's all about. Felix Knutson and his mum Astrid have a secret. They're living in a van. Astrid promises it's only till she finds a new job and begs Felix not to breathe a word. So when Felix starts at a new school, he does his best to hide it from his friends, even though his home has some serious downsides, like no privacy, heating, space, and worst of all, no bathroom. But Felix has a plan to turn his and Astrid's lives around. All he needs is a little luck and a lot of brain power. Again, it's a brilliant book, a fabulous read. It's an orange, really enjoyable. Really good questions as well, and I think the characters are in it are very, very well written. Have a read of it and see what you think. I think it just basically goes to show that you don't really know what's going on in people's lives, as basically his friends at school don't realise that he lives in a van. He's obviously very ashamed about it, but when they do find out, it just goes to show that they don't really care. They like him for him. And there's a really, really good ending to the story. It's a great story curve. Again, contemporary fiction, all of hers are. I think I read also My So-Called Messed Up Life, which is great. We're All Made of Molecules. Again, really, really good. So explore her as an author. I think, you know, she's well worth looking at. And No Fixed Address is really a great title and really makes you think. And I think that's a great thing about some books. They do actually make you think. So a bit of a transition there from a comedy genre coming into a transition read for year 7 to 8. But do have a look on the ebook platform. There are lots of really good challenging reads on there. If you fancy a change and if you need any recommendations, then drop me a line. Well, that brings us to the end of our summer book talks, guys. I am hoping that there's something that you have listened to today that you think, great, I'll give it a go. There is, as I said, something for everybody. What I will do is I will upload the list of books that we talked about onto Google Classroom so that you'll be able to go back down the list and, just in case you've forgotten the title, and remind yourself of something you might have enjoyed. If you see something on the platform that you like, give it a go. It's all about reading for pleasure and just carrying on with the reading. So all I can say for now is it's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from Dash. Take care and stay safe, and I really hope to see you all again soon. Bye for now.